Member of the board of Scottish Left Review, Vice Convener of Scottish CND. It's a personal pleasure to introduce to the stage Isobel Lindsay.
I'd like to explore the interrelationship between national identity and social equality, because I think we shouldn't be too afraid of using national identity, and we shouldn't be too afraid in this campaign of emotion. One of the reasons why I think the left broadly has been more successful in Scotland is that we've been able to use identity issues on our side. And one of the reasons why, very sadly, the left has been so much less successful in England is that national identity was captured by the right. So let's explore these things, because I think before we go into the final stages of the campaign, we should feel secure about what we're doing and saying and where we are. There's a lot of ambivalence around the concept of nationalism. And I think you've got to go right back to basics and to recognize that we are essentially social animals, that absolutely fundamental to human civilization has been a degree of loyalty, including emotional loyalty, to social group and to place. And the reason for this is very basic. It's because you can't develop cultures, you can't develop knowledge, civilizations. You need to be able to do so, to have continuity, to transmit this knowledge, this culture from generation to generation to develop. So in other words, wired into what we are as human beings is that degree of social identity. Now, obviously, that can be used in different ways. And the term nationalism, I think we use this very, very broadly, or should use it very broadly, because in the past it might have been called tribalism, it might have been called loyalty to city-states, whatever it is. We do need this overarching identity, and we do need to have that continuity, that place. Just wait for a few weeks and watch the World Cup. You may like it, you may not like it, but my goodness, there will be a lot of real human emotion out there. Just look at when people win at national sporting events and they hear their national anthem and the tears trickle down. We shouldn't be rejecting this. We should be working with it, bringing these sentiments onto our side. Because the thing about, I would say, nationalism, using that very, very broadly, is that it is a core part of what it is to be a human being, but it's morally neutral. It can be used in ways that are very positive. It can be used in ways that are very negative. And it's really rather like sex. It is essential to what we are as human beings, but it can be used in very destructive ways or very positive ways. And we have to look, I think, at national identity in this way, in this context. And we are very fortunate in Scotland in that what we have, partly as a result, I think, of having lost our statehood, partly as a result of lots of very negative things that have happened to us, but we've been left with symbols of that national identity, with myths around it, which in many ways favor social equality. And I think the tragedy for England is that although there's an entirely different story about England, which could have been told, which should have been told, but the dominance of the monarchy, the aristocracy, the militarism in so much of English identity because it was captured by the elites and it was captured by the right. And the left didn't effectively, for most of the time, I think there were some limited periods when they did, but for most of the time, didn't succeed in gaining it back. But if you think of the situation in Scotland, if you think of our national myths, I'm not going into whether they're true, not true, but if you think about them, we've got Robert Burns, we've got the Highland clearances, we've got Red Clydeside. Yes, we have the militarism, but it is the militarism of the infantry, not of the generals or the admirals. So there is lots in that Scottish identity which we have been able to take, to develop, to say, this is a reason for social solidarity and equality. Because if you think of it, you can use national identity in these entirely different ways. You can use it to say, we are the dominant people, and it becomes imperialism and aggression against others. You can use it to say, the leaders in our society are the people who determine the quality and the existence of this society, and it becomes that elitist, aristocratic myth. Or you can use it to say, we are all part of this society. We are all part of the same group. And that means we should all have that equality of treatment, that social justice, that fairness, because we are all the same. And that isn't a solution. There's another side to that coin, which is the internationalism. But it's an important starting point that we can tap in to these basic human emotions, not try and ignore them or dismiss them, but tap into them and try and build on them a story that is a story of human justice and human equality. And we are in that situation when we can do this in Scotland. Now, this has to be done with care. I regularly, in referring or in talking in England, point out the fact that there are great egalitarian myths in the context of English history, English society, which should be the dominant myths, but they're not. And this is something that has to be battled out there and fought for there. But we are lucky here that we can work with the grain of that national identity, and we can use it to build a Scotland that is much more egalitarian. People have sometimes said, we've seen a lot of it in recent weeks, and how delighted so many of these opponents of independence were. You know, liberals, so-called socialists, to say, oh, UKIP got 10%. Now, given the enormous amount of coverage that they were getting night after night from London, and this is where I would criticise the BBC rather more than BBC Scotland, but nevertheless, it was still very modest. But the delight they were taking in more or less saying, oh, look, you're as bad as everyone else. Now, what we have got to do is to say there is another Scotland that is possible, to take the Rick slogan. And we have the enormous opportunity to do it. And we can do it with the grain of the people of Scotland. And don't let people say, oh, Scotland being more egalitarian, it's a myth. A myth is a story we tell ourselves. And if the Scots can keep on telling themselves the story that they believe in greater equality, in greater fairness, and that is part of what we are, then that makes it so much easier for us to translate that into hard policies, to the plans that will enable Scotland to be that fairer place after a yes vote. Thank you.